Mary. There's something about your name when it's spoken to you by someone who loves you. It gets your attention. Hello, and welcome to My Daily Walk, the show where a Hollywood guy, that's me, walks around and talks about anything and everything except the things I'm contractually bound to conceal. Wow, I think that's actually the first time it's rolled off the tongue without hesitation, without self-correcting, the intro part. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, it starts with a cold open that is tied to the subject matter, the content, the topic of today's episode. Then we have an intro, which I just rattled off. Let's see if tomorrow I'm able to do it as effectively and concisely and succinctly, etc. Then there's programming notes. So let me get straight into those. We have an email address if you want to suggest a topic or add some input or say you love what I'm doing or hate what I'm doing, whatever your opinion, email me at here. What is the email address? And there's another thing that needs to start rolling off the tongue. MyDailyWalk at thiswaytv.com. MyDailyWalk at thiswaytv.com. That's the email address. Comes straight to me. I will read it. And I will read it on the air, but generally that's saved for Fridays. Today is Monday. Now I have to, for full disclosure, share that I am not recording this on a Monday. If you've been listening all along, that has been the case, where I have been doing each episode on the day that it airs, the day of the week, not the actual day. I didn't record this morning and upload it. There's a delay. At this point, I'm not sure how long the delay is between the recording and the release, but generally I've been sticking to the days of the week so that on Mondays you will hear something I recorded on a Monday. And each week is consistent. It'll be that same week. So tomorrow's episode I recorded on Tuesday of this week, Wednesday's episode, etc. But this is the first time I'm doing something a little out of order because, well, today's Wednesday for me in the recording process. It's Monday for you if you're listening to it as it was released. Who knows what, it could be any day of the week you're listening to it if you found this file and just randomly listen to it. But if you become a regular listener, and I mean, maybe this early in the process there are no regular listeners, maybe one or two, maybe a couple, maybe more by the fifth week. But if you're one that listens every morning to the new, or every day to the new release of that day, up till this point, everything's been in order, in sequence. But this I'm recording on a Wednesday of the week, and the episode that's coming up on the Wednesday of the week you're listening, boy, this is going to get confusing. I'm recording it on a Wednesday, and it's being posted as the Monday episode. The Wednesday episode was recorded on Monday. Here's what happened. I can tell you this because I already recorded it, and so when you listen to it, I don't remember if I said in that episode that this is the Monday, I'm switching it out. Well, I did say I had a topic reserved, but I changed it at the last minute. So Mondays, I'm going to be consistent. Mondays will be Meditation Monday. It'll be a spiritual meditation. It'll be an ancient text, whether it's an Old Testament, like from the Torah, or New Testament from the Christian writings of the followers of Jesus, or I have to find where it is, but there's a verse from the Quran that I want to meditate on at some point. I'll note to self, remind myself to find where that passage is. And maybe another inspirational writing of inspirational spiritual writing. But Meditation Monday, I'm going to be consistent with that. And so what I recorded originally for Monday's episode was something spontaneously that occurred to me, and while it was fresh in my mind, I decided just to record it for that day's episode. It turned out to be it was a topical subject. I'll tell you right now, it's Eclectic Taste. That's the name of the episode. That'll be this Wednesday's episode, Eclectic Taste. Since I already recorded Tuesday's episode, which is a life lesson, let me back up. I've been rambling, and I will ramble for the full 30 minutes, but I try to be at least somewhat coherent and organized in my ramblings, especially for new listeners. So here's what the week looks like. Mondays are meditation, Monday meditations. Tuesdays are life lesson, where I talk about a true story that happened in my life, somewhere in my life. You don't know how old I am, but trust me, I've got a lot of stories to pull from. Wednesdays are topical, just random topics. I got a list of topics that I hope to get to. Thursdays are thematic Thursday. It's poetic alliteration, thematic Thursday, but really what the theme for Thursday is, it's me talking about my experiences in Hollywood. I am the Hollywood guy. I've been working in Hollywood for pushing 2 decades, so not that long or super long. Some people have been working in Hollywood their whole lives. Some people just got their foot in the door. Some people hope to get their foot in the door and never do. My foot's in the door. My leg, my full body is pulled into the door, I guess. So that's Thursday. Friday is freeform Fridays, and I will read emails on Fridays as well. It's part of the freeform. So if you're going to email me, that's when it'll be read. And because of the delay, I can't tell you when. Like if you email me right now, like if you stop down, pause this, and send an email to me at MyDailyWalk@thiswaytv.com, I will get it. But because of the delay in the production, like I'm recording it and releasing it sometime later, maybe a month later, maybe 6 weeks later, something like that. You'll just have to keep listening. Your email will be read. I'll make that promise to you. If you email me right now, your email will be read on the show on a Friday. I make that promise to the first 100 people who listen to this, if it ever gets to that many. First 100 people who email me, if it ever gets to that many, because if this thing blew up and exploded, there's no way I could get to every email if it turned into 1,000 or 10,000 emails. I don't know. I mean, there are people who do get that kind of feedback, that kind of interaction or response from their audience. Anyway, I'm not doing this for that. I'm just being practical and thinking through, not making promises that I can't keep. But if you email me right now, I will guarantee, if you're within the first 100 people, I doubt I'll get 100 emails response. I doubt I'll get 100 email responses to this particular podcast, this particular episode. So other programming notes. Let's see. I'm walking. I am walking and talking. And today I picked a place that I'm guaranteed not to be too distracted, because the topic is a very serious one that I want to get through. I want to get to it quickly, which I will. But I also I don't want to cut myself short, and the distractions of walking in certain neighborhoods tend to eat up some time. But that is a feature of the show. If, when I'm walking, I'll stop and pet a dog, or I'll try to avoid a neighbor who is going to want to say hi to me, or there'll be a leaf blower, or a lawnmower, or a truck, or construction. Like, there's noise everywhere. And this is unedited, and I don't even listen back. I don't listen back. I get it out I send it off, gets posted. I don't have time. I'm extremely busy, and just carving even this amount of time out of my day is problematic at times, but it's a discipline, an exercise. I am benefiting from it personally. It's a meditation. It's even a prayer. If you listen to I think it was last week's Monday meditation, I addressed that topic. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Oh boy, already down to 19 minutes. John chapter 20, and in verse 16, Jesus says, Mary. Pardon my ignorance of theology and biblical history, but there's a couple Marys in Jesus' life, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember which one this is. There was his mother, obviously. There was the sister of Martha and Lazarus, and there was Mary Magdalene, the harlot, prostitute, whose life Jesus transformed. Not sure which one this is, actually. In fact, there might have been two Marys in this scene. But the scene is, if you're unfamiliar, it's the empty tomb. And Mary is distraught because her Savior his body is missing, gone. As I understand it, a huge stone is rolled over the face of the tomb. This was a rich man's tomb. This was one of the Pharisees, Joseph of Arimathea, I think. Once Jesus was dead, Joseph showed up and took charge of the body, prepared it for burial, and put it in one of his tombs. So he's a wealthy man. So it's not just a hole in the ground. It's a tomb that you could walk into, and those were sealed by a heavy stone, and I think an actual seal. I don't know what a seal is placed. Like, if that seal is broken, somebody's been grave robbing. Fact check me on all this. These are just my thoughts that are popping into my head from my rudimentary knowledge of this subject matter. And she shows up, and the tomb is wide open, and there's no body inside, and she's distraught. Well, not only is she still distraught that her Savior, the Messiah, the one she believed was the coming conquering king prophesied in her sacred scriptures, not only had he died a brutal death just a few days prior, but now her only remaining contact to him, his corpse, is not even where it was supposed to be. She can't even come back and visit this spot of this holy man that she revered. And so I imagine her eyes are just blurry with tears, and her heart is in utter agony. What could be, what could top, what could be worse? What worse could happen? Now his body's gone forever, and I'll never know where it is. She has an encounter. She doesn't. There's people talking to her, and she thinks they're gardeners. She doesn't know. Again, I think her eyes are probably full of tears, and she just couldn't focus, and was just thinking the agonizing thoughts in her soul. And a voice penetrates, Mary. when your name is spoken, by someone who loves you, it gets your attention. And wow, it got her attention because she recognized that voice. He had spoken it to her many, many times before, and she never expected to hear it again. Yet she did, according to the text, according to the historical record. There are plenty of... Ooh, it's kind of echoey in here. Let me get out from under here. I'm at a park, and this is kind of a gathering spot. She had never expected to hear it again, but she did, and according to this account and other accounts, there's corroborating accounts. It's called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and that's as plainly as it can be put, is those are testimonials. It's a New Testament, starting with 4 testimonial accounts of the life of this Jewish teacher who founded a sect that became very, very popular, against all odds, against all opposition, against persecution and torture and threats of massacre. It still took root. And so, in this particular account, there's a living being standing there that she mistook for a gardener, I think, something like that. And lo and behold, it was Jesus. So, what happened here? What's going on? I mean, there's another writer and teacher, this guy named Saul of Tarsus, a very, very highly educated Hebrew, but he was educated in the wisdom of the day. I heard someone recently say he would have probably, if he hadn't turned his attention to Christianity, if he hadn't ever come into contact with Christianity, it's likely we would still know his name today, because he would have been one of those profound thinkers that contributed to Western thought, I guess. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, those guys, and this guy would have been up there. And there was a guy named Gamaliel in that time, and I think this Saul of Tarsus guy studied under him. Well, Saul of Tarsus is more commonly known as Apostle Paul, the Apostle Paul. For those of you listening, many already knew I was talking about him, but I want to be as clear with the facts as possible. In fact, I was in Saul of Tarsus' neck of the woods this past summer. Couldn't believe I was actually in a region where a lot of these stories took place. But so this guy, Saul of Tarsus, I won't get into his encounter, because he claims to have encountered Jesus in much the same way as Mary. Mary is bawling her eyes out and her name is spoken, and then Saul of Tarsus had a similar experience sometime later. But he, in his writings, again, I forget exactly where it is, but he makes a very pivotal statement. Pivotal, and that's what inspired me to meditate on this particular subject matter. He says, if Christ is not alive, if Christ was not resurrected, if Christ is not raised from the dead for all eternity, I'm doing a lot of paraphrasing here, but essentially he says, if the resurrection of Jesus didn't actually happen, then every Christian, every person that purports to be a Christian is the biggest fool and following blindly some imaginary nonsense. Okay, Paul didn't say it like that, but he essentially said, if Christ be not raised from the dead, we are of all men the most pitiable. He goes on to explain how our entire foundation of this new sect, this offshoot of Judaism that caught fire against all odds, against all opposition, that all of that is nonsense if Christ is not raised from the dead, which essentially says if you purport to be a Christian, if you apply that as one of your identifying terms, you self-identify as Christian, you associate with the name of Christ, if that's you, and you don't believe that Jesus is alive in bodily form right now, then you shouldn't use that term for yourself. You can't consider yourself a Christian. And so, again, words have meanings and words change over time. Word meanings change over time. So in one culture, well, let's say in a modern day America, United States of America, Christian, you use that word, and there's a whole cross-section of people who jump to a false conclusion about you. There's a whole cross-section of the populace that as soon as they hear that word, they put up walls and close their ears and turn the other way and cast aspersions and jump. And so that's just like, here's another word. Similarly, the word gay. It had a meaning, and then it was used in another context, and that context overtook the prior meanings. And so now you don't use the word gay as it used to be used, and it's just an example of how words can change in meaning. Even the name Jesus, okay, there was never, well, this person we're talking about was never called Jesus. I'm sorry, that's the Greek or the English transliteration of what he was actually called. Probably Yeshua. There's no, so we don't even call him by the name that he was called. So the name Jesus, for us it has meaning in our culture, because those are the sounds that we associate with this person, but he was never called Jesus to his face. It was Yeshua. So words, so when I say, if you don't believe that Jesus' physical body is alive today, when I say if you don't believe that, you're not a Christian, I mean in the truest sense of the word. You can't be. It's self-refuting, basically. What does the word Christian mean? Like Christ, or small Christ, or little Christ, follower of Christ, one among many brothers and sisters, and Jesus is the oldest brother, the oldest sibling. I mean, it's self-refuting to say I'm a Christian, but I don't believe Jesus is alive physically, that he resurrected. And that's just the fundamental non-negotiable of genuine Christianity there. And so now here's an issue, and this is fundamental. knowledge. What does it mean to know something? What does it mean to know something? The field, the field of epistemology is what we know, and how we know we know it, essentially. And what does it mean to know something? Seeing is believing. Well, others might say believing is seeing, and both have truth. I mean, you open your eyes. There's grass in front of me. I'm stepping forward, and my feet are gonna fall upon a solid surface, and I believe that I'm in a park because I see it. I could close my eyes, and it wouldn't change the fact. But believing is also seeing, because the word see, again, words have meaning and different connotations. So you have one type of seeing that is the physical realm, the light waves hitting the retina and being transformed and processed in the computer inside the gray matter. That's vision. That's one type of seeing. But we use that word seeing in several different ways all the time, every day. I see. That, whenever anybody says, I see, it has nothing to do with the visual cortex. It's another way of seeing. And in the case of a physical body 2,000 years ago being resurrected, it's like, I don't believe in God unless he shows himself to me. Well, open your eyes. He's shown you. That's one argument. It's like, open your eyes. Everything around you screams out, God is here. That's one argument. But provability, the scientific method, something that's repeatable. That's where it all breaks down. That's where they call it a leap of faith. But the fact of the matter is, scientists come up with hypotheses all the time. They're like, I think this might be true. Let's test it. And sometimes they test it and they find out it's false and they're wrong. And sometimes their intuitions are proven out. And that's the case here. Resurrection, what's the proof? Well, some would say that the transformed lives of his first followers, people willing to go to their deaths, would they do that if they knew he was dead? If they knew and they made up a story, or even if they didn't see him physically and just suspected, or somebody came up with the story, oh, he's alive, and they didn't see him themselves. So the initial 12 disciples, or 11 minus Judas, the first followers, many of them died horrible executions. Apostle Peter crucified upside down because he considered being crucified upside right his Lord was crucified that way, and he didn't feel worthy to be crucified in the same way, insisting to be crucified upside down. Again, fact check me on that. That's just what I've heard. So as far as proofs and the scientific method, it's just, there's a lot of evidence out there if you understand witness testimony and even the legal requirements for something to be considered believable. And the reason I wanted to do this, and time is ticking down, but I wanted to do this here because I know in these previous 4 weeks of content, I've talked about spiritual things, I've talked about all kinds of things, and there's plenty of things we disagree upon, plenty of things that we can agree to disagree on any number of things, but I want to state for the record right here that I believe Jesus, Yeshua, is alive in bodily form.